Software just got fast fashion. Let's talk about taste. Everyone says it's the new mode now. Here's one line before we get going. Ellison Carter, an engineer at Colorado State, wrote this: "Engineering under scarcity produces competence. Engineering under abundance demands taste." Hold on to that. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Hack, and in this video we'll talk about taste, why it matters more now in this AI era, and 3 reps to start building yours. Now let's get into it. Let's look at fast fashion for a second, because we all know how this went down. Clothes used to be made by people who knew fabric. But production then got cheaper, patterns got copied, and the fabric got thinner. Recent industry analysis shows that Shein puts somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 items online daily, and most of it ends up in a landfill before the season ends. Sounds familiar yet? Code used to be made by people who knew code. Now production is faster. AI knows how to generate code because it was trained on patterns. Architecture, the fabric, gets thinner because we're not looking behind the scenes anymore on the plumbing. Every day there are hundreds of products being built and launched. And they're all now coming from the same factories, which is why most of them look and feel the same out of the box. Software just got fast fashion. Now, a quick honest note before we keep going. AI is doing something genuinely good here. I'm not neither a doomsdayer or a skeptic. I'm simply trying to find a balance in using these tools and fight the growing slop. Like I said, I see them as powerlifters. Things that used to take teams 6 months and 6-figure budgets can now be prototyped in a weekend. We actually get to build real ideas that otherwise would have died in the gap between thinking and shipping. The problem isn't that we can ship fast. The problem is that we keep shipping the prototype as if it's the product, the first draft as if it's the final version. And the world is filling up with these first drafts. Now, everyone's saying taste is the new moat, probably the only moat. I think that's only half right. And I want to push on the word moat because I think taste is more than that. Moat is something you defend. It implies that the work is already done, that there's a finished thing inside the wall worth protecting. Whereas taste, well, taste is something else. It's different, and we'll come back to it. What's happening now is that we're in this era where you can ship a working product over a rainy weekend. It's actually raining, with nothing more than a cursor subscription and a few prompts. AI writes the code, drafts the copy, designs the layout, and generates the marketing site. In fact, with the right plumbing in place, you can even buy the domain and the needed services for deployment, so you can take your hands off completely. The execution part, which is the part that most software companies used to be paid for, it's basically solved through automation. And the result is what we've been seeing for the past 12-24 months. Agent-built wrappers nobody comes back to, or the incumbents kill with their next model release. Onboarding flows that asks everything and explains nothing. Settings page that looks like spreadsheets. AI-generated newsletters and posts you can smell 3 sentences in. We're seeing this disease of sameness all the way through. But there's a different angle to all of this. You see, we're not just building software for humans anymore now. We're building for 2 audiences that want very different things. On one side, humans, the ones we've been building for the past decades. And on the other side, agents. And stay with me, because it's getting interesting. So, for an agent, the slop doesn't matter. It doesn't care how the product looks or how it feels. It just wants structure it can read, clean APIs, and predictable patterns as much as possible. For the agent, boring is fine, and delight is irrelevant. So naturally, the temptation, if you're building toward agents, is to stop caring about the human side and ship slop. Why put effort into the craft if a bot is the one using it? Why obsess over, typography if the user is just going to tell Claude, well, summarize this, please? Why pick on the nitty-gritty subtle details to make something delightful after all, right? Well, because like I said, we're still building for both sides. And as humans, when everything around us is becoming slop, we'll actually care more about how a product makes us feel not less. The bar for human facing software just got harder, not easier. And this is where taste comes in. But let me be careful with this word because right now we're all using it, everyone's using it, and almost nobody means the same thing by it. Remember that Carter line from the beginning? Engineering under scarcity produces competence. Engineering under abundance demands taste. Here's why it stands. When making software required more resources in terms of execution, knowing how to make it was the work. Now, that making is still hard, but the execution got easier, at least the first 80%. So that knowing what to make just became the work. And we're not really trained for that yet. Let's break this down into three layers because just lumping them together is probably a part of why this conversation could feel vague. Taste isn't a preference, at least not just a preference. It's more than just I like this color or I like this shape. It's the moment you look at something and know it's right before you can explain why. You can see it and the words come later as an effect, if they come at all. Carter calls this the feeling of almost. It's that micro friction when something is close, but not quite right. You can't yet name what's wrong, but you know. Think of a piano tuner. They don't have to measure a note in cents to know it's flat. They hear it. The number comes later. Or a chef tasting a sauce. They know it needs something before they know what. Is it salt? Maybe more time? The diagnosis follows the recognition. That's what taste is doing inside you when you look at the AI's output, for example. It's recognition first, words later. Philosophers have a term for this aesthetic knowledge, and it comes from the Greek aesthesis, meaning perception through the senses. It's a real form of cognition, just one that doesn't run through logic. And this matters in the AI era because, well, AI spits you 400 variations of anything you ask for. But without taste, you pick one at random and just run with it. When taste is involved, you might look at all 400 and reject every single one. Then ask sharper questions that cut to what you actually want before the AI floods you with what you don't. That ability now to know that the prompt itself was wrong before you can articulate why, that's taste working in real time. Taste lives beyond the surface, in the plumbing. Most people, when they talk about taste, they talk about the aesthetics only. Fonts, white space, colors, material, visuals in general. And yes, that matters a lot. That's the first layer of a product, the first impression. But it's just one part. Taste also lives in what you don't see. Let's think about restaurants for a second, because this comes to mind as a recent example. I was in Italy for a week recently with my wife, and out of all the places we grabbed dinner, there's only one I remember from that trip. It was this very cozy masseria where I had the most amazing beef cheek of my life. But what made the difference wasn't just the food, because the recipe probably could have been cooked anywhere else. No, it was everything around the food. The pacing of the meal, the lighting, the ambient, the way the staff greeted and treated us, the whole experience, decisions you'd struggle to name even after the meal. But you felt every one of them as a whole. Now, back to software. It's the same. The output can be identical, but the experience completely different. Let's take linear, for example, and one of its clones. Same features, same data. While the clone can feel like a database with buttons on it, linear feels alive. And the difference isn't the color palette or the dark mode. That's on the surface. The difference is in everything around the work and behind it. The empty states that don't just say no items. The keyboard shortcuts that were treated like a design value. The features they straight up refuse to ship because someone asked for them. The transitions that just feel right even when you can't say why. And here's something else I keep noticing. A lot of products now look like linear. Dark mode, keyboard first nav, same typography choices. They copied the surface. They were a trendsetter after all. But they didn't copy the discipline underneath. So they look like linear, but they don't feel like linear. The feel lives in the parts you can't see. That's the gap nobody's pricing in. And Saarinen, the co-founder of Linear, isn't the first to think this way. The guys from 37 Signals, who I admire a lot, have been doing it for over decades. Small intentional products, refusing to add anything that doesn't earn its place. And the legendary Dieter Rams said it decades ago: less but better. Not less for the sake of less. Less because the absence of the wrong thing makes room for the right thing. That is taste in the plumbing. And it requires depth that only humans have it. Years of paying attention to what feels right and what doesn't, until your gut can flag that off by 1 degree feeling before your brain catches up. Humans already have a second brain. It's your gut. Don't outsource that. Taste asks, should this exist? This is the layer that makes people uncomfortable. It surely makes me uncomfortable nowadays. But the constraints are a must. This is where it stops being about the craft and starts being about the responsibility of what you put out there. Most builders stopped asking, can I ship this? Because now they can, and they just keep adding and adding for the sake of adding. I have fallen into this speed trap myself. The answer now is yes, you can always ship. Time used to do the filtering for you. Anything that took weeks had to earn those weeks. So there's one useful question we need to learn to ask more often these days. Should this exist? Which translates to, is this thing worth being made? Is the world a better place if I put it out? Or am I just adding to the noise? And it's not a question for the market, it's a question for the overall aesthetic. Taste is the filter for what gets to be in the world. And in an era of infinite supply, the most important act of any builder isn't building, it's choosing what not to build. When you can ship faster than you can think, the only constraint left is the one you set yourself. And that constraint is your taste. And one more thing to note here. I think this is why probably MVP is becoming the wrong target. Because when anyone can ship a minimum viable product by Sunday, the bar moves. I think the new target is the MLP, a minimum lovable product, which implies more delightfulness and craft early on. Because when there are 101 variants to the same problem, we go from does this work to will anyone come back to it? And that shift is taste driven. I will probably do a separate video on it, but it's already happening. Quick note, if this kind of thinking is what you want more of, you should check out my newsletter called principle.md. I touch there on stuff that doesn't always fit in a video. Link below if you want. One more thing to clear up before we get to practice. You're going to hear me say ship in public, and you'll think, wait, didn't you just say the world is filling up with first drafts? Yes, both are true. The first draft is supposed to be rough. That's the rep you put in. But the slop happens when rough becomes final, when the draft becomes the shipped product and never gets touched again. Drafts are how anything good gets made. The only sin is calling that draft the product and just walk away. I know that because I've done that several times. That's why I don't want to come across as someone who critiques AI from the sidelines. No, I'm deep in it. I'm building with it daily. I was on the hype train for the past few years, and now I simply try to find the line between what actually helps me and what's quietly making the work worse. The tools were doing exactly what I was asking back then. The problem was what I was asking. The hard thing I had to learn is more editorial than technical, which is that whatever AI gives me, I treat it as the starting line, not the finish line. And very often it needs refinements, edits, rewrites, sometimes thrown out and start again, with my own ear, my own eye, my own taste as the override. Sometimes word by word, sometimes line by line, sometimes frame by frame. And that's a discipline act in itself, where taste shows up. The AI gives you something fast every time. The work is deciding it's not good enough and just going again. Okay, so how do we actually develop this taste? Unfortunately, there's no shortcut. Not one that I know of. This can simply not be outsourced to AI. Anyone telling you otherwise is probably selling you some snake oil. 1. Pick one product you love and spend time to understand its why. Try to go beyond that, oh, this looks nice. Specifically, try to understand what did they refuse to build, or where does the friction live and where did they design it out? What's the typography choice? And what does it do for the feel? What's the empty state telling you about how the team thinks? What's the default setting and why that one? What's not there that you expect to be? This is how taste develops. You stop consuming products as a user and you start studying them like an architect walks around studying buildings. As a kid, I used to take apart all of my toys, driven by this intense curiosity about how they work. And that curiosity pushed me to learn coding when I was 13. It's the same instinct applied to different stages. Reverse engineer the choices. The decisions you find are someone else's taste, made visible. Expose yourself to other people's ideas. Do this with one product a week, and after a year, you've internalized 50 different design philosophies and product feels, and you can pattern match them on instinct. 2. Ship in public. Carter borrows this from the philosopher Hannah Arendt, probably misspelling the name. Taste develops through friction, but made in public. You build a skill alone, by yourself, and you build a taste in conversation with people who see things differently from you. Think about how comedians work for a second. They don't workshop jokes in their heads only. They go up at an open mic in front of strangers and they feel in real time which lines die. That's where the craft sharpens. That's where the pieces of their next year's special come together. For us, the critic shows up in different forms. Is the friend who tells you the empty state is sterile in your product. The user who says the AI features feels just bolted on. The peer who watches your demo and just goes, okay, but why? Your worst critic is also your best taste teacher. Those are the people calibrating you. 3. The kill rule. Once a week, kill one thing. And when I say kill, I don't mean deprioritize. I mean kill, removed. A feature on your roadmap, a project on your list, a section of a draft, a paragraph of a script. Something that doesn't deserve to exist. You will feel resistance. I still struggle with this. The thing has resources invested, either time, thinking process, or tokens. That thing could have been almost done. You will probably find 100 reasons to keep it. But that resistance is the taste forming. Subtraction is a creative act. Michelangelo had a line about his David, that the statue was already inside the marble. His only job was to carve away everything that wasn't it. That can sound romantic in a way, but it also kind of literally how it works. The thing you're trying to make is somewhere in there. It's hidden under all the things that don't belong. Every kill is a chip of that marble. You're not destroying it, you're revealing it. And if you're going away with just one thing from this video, make it this one. Before your next prompt, before your next ship, ask, should this exist? And if you can't answer that with a clean yes, the answer is probably no. I said it earlier, the world is filling up with these first drafts. That's not slowing down soon. Question is whether your work ends up in that pile of first. Are you stopping there? Because that's the future if we let it happen. Software built for agents to consume and slop everywhere humans look, and nobody asking what should exist. Same wall, different industry. We watched it happen with clothing. Now it's happening with software. But the alternative is right here. Yes, taste is a moat, but it's also something else. A moat is something you defend, but taste is something you become. The longer you build, the more you ship in public, the more you remove, the sharper that filter gets. Good news is that AI is already commoditizing execution, which means that what's left to do, the part that nobody can take from you and from us, is the human part. Your filter, your refusal to ship slop, a thing you and only you can recognize. When everything can be made, what you choose not to make becomes the work. Thanks for watching. I'm Hack. See you in the next one. Cheers.